Welcome back to Cut to the Chase with State Senator Amanda Chase. I'm your weekly call-in town hall and radio host, and I'd love for you to call in today. It's 804-454-1366, 804-454-1366. And actually had a number of bills to pass out of committee and on the floor this week, and I've been going through some of those. One of the bills I was going to talk about was Senate Bill 917, and I'm actually presenting this bill. It made it out of committee this week, out of our Transportation Committee, and it's actually headed to the floor of the Senate on Monday, where I'll be debating this bill. It split on party. Actually, it split right down the line. So I tell you, we vote on so many of these bills and have so many bills presented, you lose track sometimes. But this is a bill which I feel will protect our children from speeders who speed through our school zones. I live on a road that has probably about 6 schools that are on that feeder road. And I tell you, I see a number of high school kids crossing in the morning to walk over to Manchester High School. And gosh, there's so much traffic on the road, especially in the morning and the evening, but especially in the morning. And, unfortunately, there are people who speed through these school zones, and it's become a problem. So this bill is to address that. There were almost 8,000 speeding violations in school zones last year. The year before, there were over 1,100 crashes in school zones, resulting in 5 deaths. And it's a problem. If you're a parent with kids that are in school, you're concerned about your kids walking through these school zones, and I'm sure many of you have your own story. But this bill basically allows only a sworn law enforcement officer to operate equipment that will and make the decision to issue the ticket. Now, the person has to be going at least 12 miles an hour over the posted speed limit. So there's plenty of grace built in there, but it will basically fine the offender $50 every time they break that law. So now no violation will result in a report to DMV or the driver's insurance carrier, but you will be hit with that $50 fine. We're going to conduct a public awareness campaign to let drivers know the cameras will be in use. We'll post plenty of signage warning drivers that a speed camera is in the school zone, so it won't be any surprise to anybody. But we have to do something to protect our kids. I think this is a serious problem and needs to be addressed. So I'm going to go on to the next bill because I know Senator Surovell is going to be on in about 7 minutes. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit about a bill that of mine that passed committee this week, and it's Senate Bill 912, and actually passed out of the Senate, the full Senate this week. And if you're a retired law enforcement officer, this bill is for you, especially if you return to work in some type of administrative capacity. It actually allows you to continue to conceal your firearm, and the bill clarifies the process for law enforcement officers when they retire and relinquish their credentials and then return to law enforcement. So let me cut to the chase here. Sometimes I read this and I'm thinking, let me clarify that for you. So let's just say I'm a law enforcement officer and I decide I'm going to retire. Well, whenever you have your badge, that basically allows you to conceal carry. And even after you retire, you can keep that badge and you can continue to carry. But what's happened is these law enforcement officers are going back to work in the same department from which they came. But let's just say they go into an administrative area. So what's happening is they're having to give up that credential that if they didn't go back to work, they could have and they could carry. But this was basically a technical amendment to go in and fix that so they could continue to carry and keep that benefit even though they've gone back to work. So that's all that bill does. And I carried that on behalf of the Fraternal Order of Police. And so that bill is on its way to the House, passed the Senate, I think, yesterday. Senate Bill 911 is the next bill that I want to talk about. And this is an eminent domain bill. It's a very strong property rights bill, especially if you're a business owner. And after being incorporated into a similar bill, which was Senate Bill 809. It's passed the Senate. It's headed to the House for consideration. And under the current law, if a property owner is left with even 1 square foot of land after a taking, he can actually claim lost profits for 3 years. Okay, think about that. But if the condemning authority takes all of the property, guess what? He's restricted to only claiming 1 year of lost profits. Yeah, I heard that. You said that's not fair. That's what I said too. And that leads to seriously inequitable outcomes. And because the condemning authority gets to decide if it's going to take all or only part of a property, it can actually create a really perverse incentive to the authority to take more property than absolutely necessary in order to avoid having to provide compensation to the owner for 3 years of lost profits. So this bill is going to provide for the just compensation of 3 years lost profits for businesses and that lose their property in whole. And it's going to put it in line with the partial take cases currently compensated 3 years. So that was good news, and that bill has passed out of the full Senate and goes on to the House. Now, I just received word that Senator Surovell is joining us, and let's see if he is there. Can you hear me, Senator Surovell?
Yep, I can hear you. Hi, Amanda.
Hey, great. Hey, thanks for spending your Friday afternoon when I know you would much rather be at home with your family, hanging out with your kids.
Well, I am at home, but nobody's in the house, so it's just me. So this is
unusual and quiet.
Yeah.
That's what happens when your kids get older. Well,
right.
I really appreciate you coming on today. And, Senator Surovell and I are on opposite sides of the aisle, but I tell you, he's one of my favorite people, and I say that publicly. He has helped me so much on so many of my bills, and he's a brilliant attorney. And I'm even going on the record for that, Scott. So, but he was elected as the 36th District State Senator back in November of 2015 and was sworn in back in 2016, the same year that I came into the Senate. So we were both freshmen the same year, but you had a bit of experience in the House. In fact, you were the House caucus chairman, right, from 2014 to 2015?
Yeah, I was caucus chair for about 6 months right before I became a Senate candidate. Right.
Very good. Well, I really appreciate you coming on today, and I thought we could talk about a couple things. Let's start off. Everybody is talking about our vote we had just a little bit ago on Senate Bill 966, the electricity utility rate making provisions, providing customer refunds and rate exchanges for APCO and Dominion customers. So I know you and I were on opposite sides of that, but maybe tell people why you chose to support that bill.
Yeah, it's actually, so I've been in the legislature for nine sessions now, and I think this is maybe the 5th or 6th sort of, quote, big, close quote, Dominion bill we've had since I've been in. I think this is only the second one I've ever voted for. But a couple points about it. I mean, number one, I sort of, the legislative process is just that. It's a process. And bills that are this big often take some time to work out. And I think this bill probably will get some changes as it goes through the process. And this isn't probably the final version we're going to see. And part of my vote was to make sure that process can continue and the thing can continue to get worked on and teased out. And so I was not entirely excited about the bill. I think, it does have some issues, but overall I thought it was a fair approach to the problem. I mean, the rate cap that we voted on, you weren't there, but back in 2015, I guess, I voted against that because I didn't like that at the time. But that rate cap clearly doesn't work anymore.
Hey, Scott, I hate to cut you off. We've already got to go to a break, but you hold that thought because we want to hear what you have to say. We'll be back in like 4 minutes. So stay tuned. Okay. We'll be back with Senator Surovell. Sleep, dreaming about the things that we could be. But baby, All right. Well, thanks for tuning in to Cut to the Chase with State Senator Amanda Chase and State Senator Scott Surovell. And we are discussing the bill that we debated on the floor today of the Senate, the electricity utility rate-making provisions affecting customers' refunds and rate changes for APCO and Dominion customers. It's Senate Bill 966. And so we were just having that discussion. I'm sorry I had to go to a break there, Senator Surovell, but go ahead and finish what you were saying.
Yeah, no problem. So I'll try to cut to the chase, too. The premise that underlied the original rate cap just didn't apply anymore. The clean power, nobody, well, I shouldn't say nobody, it was pointed out on the floor, us Democrats at least didn't think President Trump was going to win and repeal the Clean Power Plan at the time that we passed that law. And now, the whole bill was passed because of the Clean Power Plan, and we're going to be shutting down lots of coal plants, and we wanted to hold customers harmless from that. Between that and the tax cut that just happened, Dominion is projected to be over-earning between $150 and $400 million a year that would have, if we hadn't passed that law, would be given back to customers. And so we had to do something to deal with that situation because that just isn't right.
Yeah, I completely agree. And they had actually, I know Senator Peterson and I think Senator Suderline was on that as well, a different bill, which it's interesting how all of the options were killed except for this one. But, like you said, sometimes you go with what you have and try to make better sausage out of it. So,
yeah, I mean, we had to, and then the thing is the bill is it's going to take those over earnings. It's going to be invested. It's going to be invested in improving the grid. It's going to be invested in increasing the amount of solar by about 10 times over what we have right now, or wind renewables. And that's really important to me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would preferably like to see us just enact a mandate and tell Dominion they have to derive a certain percentage of their power from renewable energy and then let the free market take care of it. But with the current legislature, I don't think that's realistic. And so I thought this was the most realistic way to maximize the amount of renewable energy that's on the grid. And one thing that I think is also hasn't been talked about a lot, but if we had just enacted a straight up give the money back to the customers bill, Dominion would get to keep about 30 cents of every dollar of that over earnings. And under this bill, they're required to put all of that money into grid modernization and solar and all that stuff. So it's not exactly there's good parts and bad parts of the bill, but just overall, I felt as if this was the best approach we're going to get to get the money, end the rate cap, get the refunds, started, and maximize green energy. And so, that's kind of where I came out on it.
Yeah, and for me, I'm not an engineer, I'm not an attorney, and I'm thinking, let's let the State Corporation Commission, who is far more knowledgeable on issues like this, to continue to regulate the rates and kind of monitor it. And I actually had the attorney, a friend who he probably lives there, works at the Attorney General's office to give me an opinion, which is where I kind of came out with my vote against the bill, but I can see why you voted for it, just to have some type of option to work with, because if we killed the bill today, we would have continued with that the rates the way they are for 5 years.
And Dominion pocketing, all Virginians' money for the next 12 months.
Yeah. So I think together we sent them a message because we had to have some type of vehicle to move forward so we could actually fix the problem. But there were some of us that had to say, no, we don't, and I stated this on the floor. I didn't really plan to speak on the floor today, to be honest with you, but it just came out. People have no idea how complicated it is to run for office and the money that goes on. And at some point, reach a max and I can't take it anymore. And so I just have to.
Well, I'll tell you though, the utility stuff that we do, the utility bills that we do are some of the most complicated issues that we have to deal with. And, I've been there 9 years and I'm still, every time we do one of these, I learn it's incredibly complex in terms of how we regulate monopolies and adjust their profits and do accountings and rate reviews and expense their costs and everything else. But also, I find that these big bills, what I'll call big bills, are often big compromises, and they're often very difficult. There's always something for everybody in them because they are compromises. they're hardly ever one way or all the other way, and they're some of the toughest votes we have to take. So it wouldn't surprise me at all that there was, I think, about a dozen people that voted no on it.
Well, at least we've got a vehicle to move it forward, and hopefully, they got the message that, they're going to have to amend this bill, hopefully some more. But let's talk about some of the good things. And I do like the idea of the grid modernization.
By the way, one thing that you and I both care about that I forgot to mention is that this also allows Dominion to write off, or not to write off, but to recover about $450 million of their coal ash cleanup expense right now. And so by knocking that out now, that I think lowers the remaining amount of money that is going to be needed to fix the coal ash problem. And so, of
$1 billion. It's a little bit, 1%. Yeah. It's all good. It all goes, but, and that's also a good point. It looks like we're already having to get a 30-second break. This time is just flying by. But when we come back from the break, I want to talk about the offsets because I know that there was some talk on the floor about the customers are basically paying twice for the problem. First, by taking from the customers their refund money, and then again by requiring customers to pay the cost of the new investments through base rates. But we'll talk about that when we come back from the break. We've already got to go to a break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right. Welcome back to Cut to the Chase with State Senator Amanda Chase and Senator Scott Surovell. And this is our weekly town hall. And we're giving you just a recap of some things that happened in the General Assembly this week. And we're specifically talking about discussion that took place and a vote that took place on the floor regarding the rate freeze with Dominion and other utilities. So before the break, we were talking about the customer pay twice problem. Scott, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's Senator Peterson, I guess, made that argument. And actually, I just watched a little video clip online of a SCC accounting person trying to explain it in a House committee earlier this week. And it's pretty complicated, but I think what the concept is that if we had just done a straight rate cap repeal, this money, whatever it is, $150 to $400 million a year, would just be refunded back to customers. It's a lot of money in the aggregate. I think overall on people's bills, we'd be talking pennies or something. It's not a huge number once you break it up amongst all the ratepayers, but in terms of individuals. But instead of doing that, we're basically taking that money and telling them to spend it on infrastructure, which we then have to pay for over the lifetime of, as ratepayers, we have to pay for over the lifetime of the asset, over like a 20 or a 30-year period. And by doing that, they argue that we're paying it twice.
Because that would be in the base rate, right, when it's recalculated?
Right. And then that's partly accurate. The part of it that's a little bit wrong is that if we were to do a straight repeal, just repeal and give the money back to the customers, Dominion gets to keep 30% of that.
Now, I heard somebody out there say, why is that?
That's just that's been the law and the practice, and that's what the law has been for years in Virginia, I think.
Yeah, I think what's so amazing to a lot of people, I know it was to me, how regulated utilities are. I mean, I had no idea. I mean, you just think that it's free markets with everything, but then you realize the more you're in the legislature, it's not at all.
No, it's not. It's not, because they're a monopoly, right? And the SCC, that's why they're there. They're there to regulate the electric company, the water company, and the phone company, and to make sure, the gas company, to make sure that all of them don't overcharge us, because you can only get your electricity from one place. So the utilities are guaranteed in exchange for having a monopoly. by statute, guarantee them a 10% return on their assets, which is a great deal. I mean, if I could get a guaranteed 10% return on my investments, I'd be in heaven.
Yeah, you and me both.
Yeah.
Well,
that's a lot.
Speaking of electricity, you and I have both worked on coal ash. And let me finish by saying Senate Bill 966, the bill that we're talking about pertaining to electricity and the rate review, that bill passed out of the Senate. That's heading over to the House. So until it comes to conference, we're done. If it comes to conference, which it probably will, we don't really have to take a look at that again for a while. So let's go on to coal ash. And I had to present two bills at the same time, and you were able to kind of get that bill going. And I didn't get to hear the beginning discussions on the coal ash bill. So I'm going to let you start with what happened with your bill, because you had like 5 bills, and I think I had one bill.
Yeah, actually, I had 6 bills, but. And my bill, all the bills were sort of a different way to attack the same thing. Some of them related to each other, some didn't. But basically what happened is Senator Wagner said, what is it you're looking to accomplish? I explained that, and we'd had some other bills prepared, and we'd had some substitute bills prepared, and we used those. And so what I told him we were trying to accomplish at this point was to continue the moratorium for another 12 months till July 1 of 2019, but allowed Dominion to shut down and close their coal ash ponds that have already been emptied of coal ash. At several of the sites, they've already, like at Possum Point, for example, there were 5 ponds, and they dug all the ash out of 4 of the ponds and put it in the big pond. Mm-hmm. And they want to be able to shut down the 4 empty ponds. And everybody thought that was fine. Mm-hmm. But under the moratorium that you and I worked on last year, they couldn't do that. So we let them do that. And then Dominion, a lot of people have had concern as to whether or not Dominion's coal ash assessments, that big 800-page document that you and I got them to publish, whether the numbers in there are accurate. And for the coal ash recycling, for example, they're saying that's going to cost, I forget, like $4 to $6 billion or something. Mm-hmm. And all the recyclers say that's wrong. So the next thing the bill does that we were going to vote on Tuesday, it says that Dominion has to go to the coal ash recyclers and ask them to give proposals to Dominion about what they're going to do and what it's going to cost, so that we can get accurate information from the recyclers about how cheaply they can do this recycling stuff. Exactly. And then all that information is to be transmitted to the legislature and the governor and DEQ and all that. And hopefully by then, and then the last thing is we're going to set up a joint House-Senate committee to sort of oversee all this and pay attention to it over the next 12 months. So hopefully after all that, I think we'll be in a position to make some decisions. So I really feel like the session, the rate cap bill we just finished talking about, sort of sucked all the legislative oxygen out of the room on Dominion stuff. And nobody wanted to talk about Dominion anymore after that thing was over with. So,
I think it built momentum so that we could move both of them forward. And I feel like the 800-page report was almost kind of dated because we had already discovered some new technologies like encapsulation and making the bricks on the site. And most of the data that we got from that 800-page report was talking about the cost of moving the coal ash off and using trucks and barges and trains. And I think we both agree that would probably not be the best solution because it could create a second public safety issue. So I like the recycle.
Very expensive too.
Yeah, and recycling on site, you would think would be a no-brainer that it would cost a lot less. So hopefully it does, but at least we'll have another year to keep them from I can't say that word. I don't know why I can't say moratorium. There we go. I got it. I don't know why I can't.
Yeah, what's going on right now around the whole country is that every state in the union is having to deal with this problem, and because there's so much coal ash out there and so much interest in recycling, there's a lot of entrepreneurs that are coming to this problem and figuring out new and creative technologies to deal with it. And so we need to make sure that we don't just tell Dominion, go ahead and cover it up, whatever, and we don't get to take advantage of those the new innovation that's going on there and create some jobs and get rid of the problem forever instead of just putting it under a blanket.
Yeah.
So
exactly. And I was talking to someone who lives near the Chesterfield power plant, and they said that some of the coal ash at one point before they capped and sealed it in place was actually blowing on their houses and that type of thing. So I guess maybe their initial thought was we'll just keep it from blowing all over the place and just take care of it. But then, they're not thinking about, the ground layer and the aquifers, beneath the surface. And I think I made it pretty clear in that committee. I think we both did, that we want some type of protection between the ground and this coal ash because of all the hexavalent chromium and arsenic and everything else in there. That
lead.
Yeah, that's a problem. but a lot of
that's not good for your complexion.
No, definitely.
I don't know many people that like hexavalent chromium with their oysters.
No, definitely not. And in Chesterfield we have Dutch Gap, which is a public park, which is right next door to the Chesterfield power plant. A lot of people, I don't know if they realize that or not, but when you start boating and fishing and you're like, what is that massive contraption over there? That's what it is.
Oh, the same thing's true at the one by my one in the 36th district up here in Dumfries. It's right next to Quantico Creek, and the coal ash ponds were like literally 50 yards from the shore. Mm. And, the stuff leaches out water, and there's fish swimming around there. People catch the fish, they eat them.
Well, I'm glad that we're moving things in the right direction. I have, in the meeting, I called for full excavation, and I know you have as well. So I think the thought of actually capping and sealing it in place is kind of hopefully off the table at this point. I know that's what Dominion was kind of pushing for because it's the most cost-effective solution. But our next concern, I think, will be cost and making sure that we don't create rate adjustment clauses that will be on your bill that says you're paying for coal ash. So we are very concerned about that. So that's why we're making sure we're doing all our due diligence on the front end, can actually get some real numbers so that we can do our due diligence and make sure that we're not passing that on to people. So, gosh, we're already going to a break. Wow. Time flies when you're having fun, right?
Yep.
Coal ash is so much fun. So are electricity rates. Everybody probably is tuned out. They're like, why in the world? The Lee brothers is a little more entertaining than Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase, but we are definitely informative. So stay tuned. We'll be right back right after the break.
I can't lean on earthly things 'cause broken is gonna fade.
All right, this is the final segment of Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase, State Senator Amanda Chase, and State Senator Scott Surovell, my very special guest today. And, we've only got like 3 minutes to go, but I just want to remind you all that you can go to virginiageneralassembly.gov and you can actually watch us in action in committee, which is where most of the work is done. Or you can tune in when we're voting. Sometimes you'll hear debates like you heard today on the floor, and that can be pretty interesting. But just a reminder that during session, I will be on the air. I know the advertising hasn't changed. It still says we're on Thursdays from 4 to 5, but we're actually going to be on during session from Fridays from 6 to 7, just because I'm usually in a meeting or working on bills or something like that. So next week, Senator Surovell, we're probably going to end up voting on Medicaid.
Really? That's news to me.
Rats, we're out of time. So that's going to be really interesting. And I tell you, it's get ready for the discussion. I'm telling you, take down the website. We're doing the people's business, and we want to hear from you, hear what your thoughts are. I narrow it down to several different options. There's Medicaid expansion, full-blown, 9-to-1. The government pays $9 to every $1 the state gives. There's regular Medicaid, which is 1-to-1, which has to do with Medicaid waivers. And then there is this plan that the Republicans are coming up with, and we'll probably end up having to wait till next week to talk about that, but you'll definitely want to stay tuned. I think we have like four seconds left. Do you have any final comments, Senator Surovell?
No, it's gonna be a busy week. We have crossover on Tuesday. We're gonna have a lot of votes on Monday. It's gonna be a real long floor session, I think, and we do the budget right after that. The next day or the next couple of days, I think Thursday we do the budget. So it's gonna be a busy week, but we're efficient. Unlike Congress, we do the same amount of work Congress does in about 60 days. It takes them a year to do whatever they do. It takes us about 60 days, and we get it done. Deadlines are good things, and also part-time jobs and salaries are good things. If we get it done. Because we don't get it done, we can't go home and make money. So.
Yep, that's exactly right. We have to live under the laws that we pass. So.
Yep.
That's exactly right. Well, Senator Surovell, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's always a pleasure to have you, and just appreciate you so much helping me with my bills this week. And it's going to be fun next week. So y'all have to stay tuned next Friday evening from 6 to 7, and we'll be discussing probably a lot of different things. The budget, Medicaid, you won't want to miss it. Stay tuned.
Thanks, Amanda. It's
Thanks.
been fun.
All right. Thanks, Senator Surovell. Have a good weekend.
Okay, you too.
All right. We'll see you next Friday from 6 to 7. Have a great week.